Everybody, welcome to the very next episode of Two Dads, One Car, where we find the hidden truths of fatherhood. I'm excited to bring on our very next guest. He's someone I've known since high school in grade 10. We've definitely tracked our lives since then, from going to high school together, going to university, and now been on many different trips. We've seen the very silly sides of each other. We've partied with each other quite a few times as well too, but definitely excited to chat with him. He has a daughter of, I think, over 4 years actually, so definitely further along in the fatherhood journey than many of us, the guests, along. So I'm excited to learn from him, understand what it's like to raise a daughter, because yeah, that's what's happening soon. Anyways, long story short, I'm going to give him a call. Let's see how he's doing. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Let's do this.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
Not gonna lie, I googled ahead of time how to open the door on a Tesla. I had to watch 3 separate videos to make sure I was fully briefed for the entrance procedure. So
It's all good. I'll just pre-open it.
yeah,
How's it going, man?
Good to see you, man.
Long time no see.
Yeah. Thanks for picking me up. So
Of course.
I come bearing gifts. It's a little pool float toy.
Are we gonna go floating together?
right now? Let's go. Yeah, it's great. The water's great out of season. No, yeah, it's a fun little toy for you and the little one when she gets older to float around. Some of our happiest memories with the kid was when she started getting introduced to the water and the swimming pool and all that. So
That is so cute.
yeah, and I mean it's a unicorn. So.
I'm guessing you're the person carrying the kid. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, the packaging is pretty descriptive there. So.
I love it.
Nice.
You okay if we started shooting?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Here we go. So I gave a brief intro to you earlier on, but maybe you could just fill the audience in on kind of your name, and your fatherhood experience.
Fatherhood experience. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Roger Ling. Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone. And my fatherhood experience is, we have a daughter. So one child family for now, and we are happy to say she is 4 currently. 4 going on to 14. We like to joke sometimes. Yeah. It seems like every day she's learning more sort of quips and catchphrases and fun things to say. So 4 going on to 14.
I did guess right. I was like, I think she's 4.
yeah, just turned 4 back in June. So, but what is time now?
What is time?
What is time? What is the meaning of time?
Let's start with that.
Yeah.
What is time?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right. Like, what was it like these last year? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think every family has undergone some pretty significant changes and challenges and adaptations during COVID, like ours notwithstanding. So at the time when pandemic hit, Valerie was in daycare, and daycare closed down for a few months, right, out of safety concerns. And so for 2 or 3 months it was me working from home, Carolyn working from home, and the kid being home full time. So I think probably a very common experience for a lot of families, and it was great, but it was also definitely very intense for sure. We're in a 1,000 square foot condo here in Richmond. Super thankful to have our own space. Prior to that, we were sharing my mom's townhouse. So if COVID had hit during that period of our lives, it would have been even cozier, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just observing the Richmond traffic. Richmond traffic. Woo! Richmond special.
Just earlier, I missed your lane. I was like, I'm perpetuating the stereotype.
But obviously, looking back in hindsight, it worked, and we made it work. But it was challenging, right? And they're trying to balance work duties and tasks in the moment, as well as having a kid needing your attention was tricky. So, but since then her daycare's reopened. She's been back full time now. She's really enjoying it there. And now Carolyn and I, we're still working from home, so we're able to stay productive and maintain some semblance of work-life balance. So yeah,
that's awesome. And as I forgot to mention from the get-go, like I'm really grateful for this discussion actually, because I've been learning a ton, and Roger's a friend that I've known since grade 10, and I feel like we've walked through so many chapters of life together. Yeah. From the clubbing phase, trying to many phases of life.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you walked this next chapter of fatherhood first before I did.
Oh, you're most welcome. Yeah. And no, definitely the nostalgia hit me pretty hard when I was like, Steve and I used to, talk about when the next upcoming test was for IB Bio or something like that. And now we're talking about kids. Yeah. So the time has flown by for sure.
I guess in your like friend network, outside of me, I guess I'm behind. There's no real behind per se.
Mm.
When you first had Valerie, like were there other friends of yours who had kids, or more like Carolyn's friends, or like?
Yeah, I would say taken together, like between our two circles of friends, hers is much larger than mine, by the way. Yeah, mine technically qualifies as a circle because it has more than one person, but yeah, it's much more limited compared. Exactly, yeah. I would say we weren't the first, right? We certainly had a few other friends who had already blazed the trail a little bit, and as you say, sort of yeah, taking the first steps. But yeah, we were probably in, I don't know what's like, so not the early adopters, I guess, but whatever the next wave,
late adopters.
yeah, wave after that is. Yeah. So yeah, so definitely we had heard of some experiences, but we had to learn a lot for ourselves as well. So yeah.
And I'm only observing from far, right? Like, Raji, you seem like such a fantastic dad, man. You put so much love into Valerie, and you can see that, like, who she is right now as a person.
Mm.
Do you think that the way a theme that comes up a lot is really the generational differences in parenthood, right? Like,
Yeah.
our parents versus now.
Yeah.
Like, how would you describe like the millennial fatherhood? Like, what is that? Like,
Yeah.
in your words, what does that look like?
Yeah. No, well, thanks for the kind words, Steve. So I think
I actually
you only see the good stuff. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
So yeah, like every dad and myself, for sure, yeah, we get frustrated and yeah, like definitely there are times when I'm not the best dad to my kid and we make mistakes and all. So all that happens behind the scenes. It doesn't end up on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that as well. I think for the first 3 years, and I was hearing the other dads on your show who have younger kids or had younger kids, and talking about that initial stage of life. Like, so much of it is just what I would call like survival, right? Like, you're just day to day, making sure the kid is sleeping, eating, pooping, and getting changed, and not dying, right? But then now, from what we've noticed, like from age 4 onwards, we have a bit more time to Carol and myself talk between the two of us about like bigger picture stuff, right? Like, now, like, what kind of kid do we want to raise? Like, what sort of values do we want to pass on to her, and so forth. And the generational question comes up a lot. And it's interesting because I think, the past does inform the present and the future. For myself, both experienced periods of like absentee fatherhood, or fathers who just weren't around for one reason or another, and it leaves an imprint, I think. For myself, and I can only share from my own experiences. My father passed when I was relatively young. He departed when I was 12, and prior to that, our family, like, he was kind of self-made man. Like, he and my mom grew up in Hong Kong, like, very poor, and just worked their way from the bottom up, and established a very good, very comfortable lifestyle for my mom, my sister, and myself. But yeah, it just meant like nonstop work, essentially. Like, my dad, poor guy, was working 6 days a week, and like off on a Sunday kind of thing for a half day. And then also for a good period of time, we had the astronaut parent situation, right? Where my mom, my sister, and I, the three of us, were in Toronto, and then my dad stayed in Hong Kong to continue to manage his business and earn the income. So even prior to his death, like, I think my dad unfortunately wasn't able to be around a lot, right? And so I think that definitely leaves a bit of a void or a gap in my experience, because now when I look at my kid, I'm like, well, how should I do this? Like, how do I teach my child? How do I raise my child? One standard way to approach it is, well, how did my dad raise me? And unfortunately, that it's a bit of a blank there, right? So I think sometimes I feel that, and sometimes I feel, I wish my dad were around to either give me advice, or I could bounce ideas off of him. And secondly, like, speaking of generational, I think it's also I think our sort of scope and our expectations to some degree are bigger now as well. So like, for our family, it was just about really taking care of our family unit, right? Like, my mom and dad worked as hard as they did because they want to provide for us and make sure that our family's good, right? And thankfully, because of their efforts, we are. And now it's like we continue that. Carol and I are fortunate to have had great educations. We have well-paying jobs, stable jobs, good careers, and we're able to provide for ourselves. And so now, what we're asking ourselves is like, can we do more, right? It's great you can look after your own, but can you look after others? Can you uplift others? Can you identify those who are struggling and challenged and do something to help, right? So I think those are the kind of perspectives and mindsets that we have when we talk about how we want to raise our kid.
The first thing that comes to mind when you share that, it reminds me of psychology class. There's the hierarchy of needs, right? Like, okay, let's get the kid fed and alive,
yes.
right?
Maslow, as I recall, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, our parents were like, hey, let's just get the kid fed. Like, let's not think about public service, just like, get the kid fed.
Yeah.
And I guess, we're in a definitely a more privileged state than back then, and we figured it out, and I'm certain that we will as well. I'm also so glad you brought up the topic of your dad, actually, because that's actually where I wanted to go to, and I'm glad we went down that route. You mentioned the void, and you mentioned like trying to figure out what it's like to raise a daughter without trying to think about your memories. One thing that I haven't told you this in camera or even in person, but I remember in grade 10, I was like, man, this guy is really mature. Right? And then I remember learning back, I remember learning back in the day, I think someone told me, I think Rose or somebody, is like, yeah, actually, Roger's dad, like, passed away when he was in grade 7. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I was like, wow, like, I wonder what that was like. I mean, I'm sure he must be so proud of you right now. Like, look, do you ever think about that?
Yeah, obviously. And this is it, where now for myself going through fatherhood, as I engage in moments with my daughter, like I have flashbacks. I'm like, oh, like as I'm feeding my daughter like her first spoons of food, like I vividly, like there's a picture of my dad feeding me, and also my dad feeding my sister. So I mean, like, as much as he was busy and absent, he did his absolute best to be around and to have those moments as well, right? And in terms of maturity, thank you for that. I think I might just look tired. Is what it was. It looked like a sack of garbage. I think so after my dad passed back in Hong Kong, we moved here to Vancouver for a change, right, and to start a new chapter in our lives. And to some degree, and speaking with my best friend about it as well, Neil, kind of thinking back to those years, and like. My mom continued to be the head of the household, obviously, since she was the adult, and she continued to look after us. But in certain respects, I was also called upon, and my sister as well, was called upon to take on certain duties and responsibilities that normally wouldn't, fall, a kid my age, right? So like, grade 7 or 8 or 9 or something, like, our garage door is broken, so Roger, take care of that. I'm like, okay, like if you entrust me with it, I will do my best, right? So and you kind of figure it out, kind of thing. So all that being said, I think in relation to the sort of absent father experience, it's now a lot of times when I have the clarity and when I have the time to think about things, I'll say, well, okay, I didn't get to experience my dad interact with me that way, right? Like I don't have that many memories. For example, with physical intimacy, like he didn't hug me a lot, he didn't kiss me a lot, he didn't say I love you, right? That's what I miss. That's what I'm gonna give to my daughter, right? Because I know I needed it so much, and I know that sticks with me, and I want to provide that. I want to show up in that way. Like things that we craved and we needed as kids, and wasn't provided to us. We hold on to that, right? And we're gonna go the extra mile and then some to make damn well sure that those things are provided to our own kids.
Dude, you just gave me like chills down my spine. That was so powerful, and I'm just soaking in. I'm sure those who are listening are soaking in right now, right? Because you now have the opportunity to reshape the narrative and reshape the story as opposed to perpetuating it. And it reminds me, if you don't mind me sharing. So I was in Toronto in June. My dad is going through cancer. He's actually recovering quite well. Oh, great. But during the time I was there, he was just knowledge dumping every single day. Right. Like just like everything. Yeah. But also made me realize that he had no idea what he was doing back then. And and I just have this different kind of sympathy for him. And
Yeah.
I think the one thing he said was very powerful was like, Steven, like, I don't want you to perpetuate what I did wrong. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what a realization.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really, that's really remarkable of him to have the awareness and to say that to you specifically, right? I think, mortality, and my dad also died from cancer. So I think mortality brings a lot of things into focus, right? And makes you realize that, well, what is really important? What can we let go? And sometimes with the older generation, our parents' age, like they, I think there's a certain level of like, I'm the authority figure here, I'm the parent, therefore, like, there's some things I can share, but there's some things I'm going to, play pretty close to the chest and not divulge to my kids, or it all comes from a place of love, I think. Like, they say, we want to protect you and let you, be worry-free and stress-free, and therefore, like, I'll shoulder the burden of all the heavy stuff, right? But, in this case, based on what your dad said, and he was willing to relinquish that and say, hey, like I made mistakes, and you need to know, and because I want you to avoid these mistakes, right? So that's a really, really powerful thing.
And I want to link back to what you said in the very beginning about the the perfection on Instagram, and like got everything together. And maybe fathers don't have that same kind of pressure to maintain that level of perfection on the imagery. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
But I think there's additional pressure. Maybe it's still carried on from tradition where the male is the caregiver, the financial caregiver, providing that kind of support. And I also sense, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also a bit of an identity shift sometimes. And how do you navigate that? How do you maintain your sense of self, but also being there for your wife and also your daughter? And what does that look like? I'm sure that's not perfect either.
No, yeah. And I would say, probably, most definitely everyone's experience is different. So, I can only share my own and not be prescriptive. But yeah, everything you said, and then some. So I think the standards for mom are like, 100 times, if not 1,000 times higher. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of become a cliche joke, right? That like, if dads, just happen to be able to change a diaper every once in a while, then we're superstar rock star dads, and like it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think it sort of that cliche and that sort of stereotype is funny, but then it can be a bit harmful as well, because it does, like, traditionally that bar was set so low for dads, right? Like, as long as we showed up and did something, then it was good enough. When in fact we have so much to give, and we have rightfully and definitely a big role to play in supporting our wives and our kids. So I think first thing is recognizing dads need to be there and be present and be ready to lean in and do their part. And then what you said earlier about like the pressure on women, moms in particular, especially like postpartum, after pregnancy, is super, like, to me, ludicrous, right? Like, the things on social media, the things on traditional media, things are photoshopped. It's, after you give birth, like, that belly should disappear right away, right? And you're doing yoga like 3 days later, aren't you? Like, and it's like, well, no, not really. Especially, for us, Valerie arrived via C-section, which is major surgery. Like, we took the prenatal class, and they talked us through like what a C-section actually is. Like, it's not just like, cut it open the door, and bring the baby out. Like, you're open. Like it was really eye-opening. So the instructor had sort of like a kind of like a teaching tool where it was like different layers of like felts and fabrics to demonstrate, like, first you remove the skin, then it's the fat, and then it's the muscle, and then it's the layer after that. And it was just layer after layer of major surgery in order to make that happen. So all that being said, it made me recognize just how much sort of physical trauma it brought to Mama's body, right? And like, she needs time really to recover from surgery and to rest. And no, she's not going to be, doing child's pose and sun salutations, 2 weeks later kind of thing. It's insane. So there's that piece. I think a lot of it is just constant reminders as well, because we're all susceptible to it, right? Like
Yeah.
we see these images all around us. We see that, and we think it's normal to, oh, like, yeah, that must be what parenthood is, and it's not, in fact. And I alluded to it earlier. So much of the stuff that happens behind the scene will never make it to Instagram, because
Hopefully this podcast.
hopefully, yeah, because there's again, it's just glamorization of parenthood. So I think, to answer the last part of your question, like for myself, it's like I've always just started from a place of supporting Carolyn, honestly. And maybe like I haven't thought as holistically or as deeply about it, but like my role as father, first and foremost, is to love my wife and to support my wife, right? Obviously, like we love Valerie to the moon and back, as people say nowadays, but like the core of our relationship is my relationship with my wife first, right, and vice versa. And so we love each other, we support each other, we take care of each other's needs, and then from there we have a place of having enough to look after a kid as well, right? I think some advice I've received from my mom and my parents-in-law is like, as soon as sort of the kid or kids supplant that, where they become like the very top priority, that's when things can get out of whack a little bit.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because that's when I think as spouses and as life partners, like husband and wife, there can be some suffering that goes on, but it kind of gets covered over with just kid stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the communication kind of shuts down a little bit. All the priorities put on the kids, and so the actual sort of health and well-being of the marriage itself. Okay, here's another one. isn't quite there. So that's good. Hope that makes sense. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm still thinking through some of this stuff myself.
No, I think the beauty of that is we're all trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough question, and sometimes the tough questions aren't really asked or thought about. It's like, oh, it's all perfect, right? But I think there's more deeper aspects to it that I feel like there's opportunity for dialogue and to understand, and especially the identity piece. But at the same time, like I also understand that there's a different level of happiness, and I'm sure it might be glamorized, right? The moment that Valerie came out, it's all sunshine and rainbows. The gods were singing, the angels were like, flowers everywhere.
Yeah,
was that the case, or was it less like?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Was there music and orchestra playing?
Oh yeah, no, there's euphoria, my friend. When the baby arrives, like especially for Carolyn and us and me. So there was a long labor process.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was in labor for over a day, basically. I think we ended up clocking in at like 26 hours or so.
Oh my gosh.
If not more, yeah. So again, yeah, Carolyn, such a fighter. So credit where credit's due. She really, really took one for a team. But yeah, I mean, after all that waiting, there was some sort of drama as well, like mom and baby inside of her were getting quite hot during labor, and the doctor was saying like, well, this, it's okay, but it's sort of a little outside of the range of normal temperature, so that's why they had to do C-section. Anyway, so after all of that, to finally see your baby, you are just overcome with
like finally.
Yeah, that definitely. Yeah, there's relief, and just like, really just speechlessness, because and it wasn't just the labor, like it was the 9 months leading up to it as well, right? Like all the preparation and anticipation and so forth. So yeah, it's I think the movies also glamorize the labor process a lot, right?
Yeah,
and,
it does,
and take a lot of shortcuts and makes things very unrealistic in many ways. But I would say the moment of joy that they try to capture and portray in movies is pretty spot on, I would say. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting for you. Yeah.
Thanks, Roger. I think it could happen any moment. It could literally happen tonight.
when is the due date?
Like literally now.
Okay, and you're driving me around in your Tesla, doing zero emission donuts in the parking lot? No.
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
My wife's at the mall shopping around.
Yeah, I was
She's
like, walking there by herself. Yeah. It's okay. I'm sure she has you on speed dial.
Very last question, just to end it off.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Valerie is starting to comprehend and speak English and read and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a special message to say to her, chance that she listens to this podcast now or when she's studying in grade 1,
Yeah,
what would that be?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, would she like? Would she click on this link? Would you watch? Would you watch this video of your old man talking up a storm in this car here? Yeah, just that. Obviously, we love you. You know that, and we are always here for you. And that's like a completely unchangeable, immovable fact is we will always be here to listen to you, and we'll always be a shoulder for you to cry on should you need it. We'll be your biggest cheerleaders. But yeah, we're always here for you. So whatever you're going through, whatever we're going through as a family, we're here for each other. So that's it.
Touching. That is all very true. I've known your parents for a long time, and we played music together. So
Yeah,
I'm excited for you, Roger.
thanks.
Excited to kind of
Excited-
walk this journey.
Excited for you. Yeah.
Thank
it's
you.
Gonna be a blast for you. So
Oh man. Well, those who are listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning to the end. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere, everywhere. Yeah, and that's it. We'll bring it to a close.
thanks, buddy.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye now.
Cheers.